Howdy. My name is Nonat, and don't worry about the guy liner. I just came off of playing in Jasper's Game Day, the charity event. It was a blast. I played a depressed Kitsune investigator. It was awesome. And to distract you from the eyeliner, here's some really attractive artwork from Impossible Lands. Nice. Pathfinder 2e is a high fantasy, high power role-playing system where each character gets stronger and stronger with every passing day. These strong characters become increasingly more powerful when combined with a full, unique, complementary party of characters. A rogue is always stronger when they have somebody to flank with, and the barbarian deals way more damage after the enemy's been frightened by the wizard's fear spell. But what if a single character could fill multiple roles? What if that rogue had a summoner's eidolon to flank with? What if that barbarian could debilitate their opponent with magic before charging into battle? Well, then you'd have some insanely powerful characters that would need some insanely powerful enemies to fight back. Hey, I'm interrupting myself to say, hey, if you're enjoying the content, subscribe. It really means a lot. I'd love to crack that 30,000 mark sometime here in the near future. And yeah, I realize I don't ask for subscriptions enough, which is so backwards because people hate being asked to subscribe. But it works, and I haven't been asking for subscriptions in a long time, and it shows. So, hey, if you enjoy the content, please do leave a sub and like the video. Helps us out in the algorithm. Back to the content. Let's face it, it's really hard to get 4 adults to clear their schedule weekly to allot a 4-hour session consistently. This can feel like a Herculean task of just impossible proportions. But luckily, Pathfinder 2 has you covered. Pathfinder has a variant rule that could allow a party of 2 or even a single character to experience an almost unedited campaign by themselves. Allow me to introduce the dual class variant rule. This is a variant rule that is not to be confused with multi-classing. That is a completely different subject. Rather, this is an optional rule you can include in your campaigns. Introduced in the Game Mastery Guide, the dual class variant allows player characters to select 2 primary classes during character creation. Upon creation and leveling up, they will get the full benefits of both classes. For example, if you are a fighter wizard dual class, you have all of the weapon and armor proficiencies of a fighter and the entire spellcasting potential of a wizard. There are a few exceptions of what is and isn't combined by the 2 classes, and that's what I'll be covering here today. But first, I invite you to take a dip in my G Fuel pool. That's right, G Fuel loves me so much as a sponsor, they gave me a swimming pool filled with clickbait. Clickbait's the name of the drink, not like a fake ad. What can I say? G Fuel gets me up and ready to go every day. It's replaced coffee for me, and there's so many flavors that I still need to try. Again, my latest kicks have been clickbait and hype sauce. They're delicious. I haven't even finished those 2 tubs, and I've been going at them daily for 4 months. If you want to try G Fuel today, click the link in the description and use code NONAT at checkout for 30% off your order. That's 30% off of a potentially $30 tub, which cuts it down to like 24 bucks. That's math, right? Or if you don't want to commit to a tub, try getting a starter kit to see if you like the product for very little investment. I really swear by G Fuel, like, green screen pool aside, I've been loving G Fuel. I've been having it almost every day. It gets me to work, it gets me moving, and it's a great way to start the day. So check out the link in the description, pick up some G Fuel, and thank you G Fuel for sponsoring me and all the YouTube channels that we love. Okay, so when using the dual class variant rule, obviously you're going to end up with characters that are more powerful than someone not using the dual class variant. But it's not as broken as you might initially believe. See, Pathfinder 2e has some amazingly solid built-in balance that prevents the game from being broken even if you have 2 full classes of abilities. Remember, you still only have 3 actions per turn, so even if you can cast spells like a wizard and create items like an alchemist, you can't typically do both on the same turn. Additionally, the multiple attack penalty still applies, so even if you have the bow skills of a ranger and the great club skills of a barbarian, attacking multiple times in a turn is still going to have less rewards over time. There's a smarter way to say that. What's the diminishing returns? Additionally, you can still only benefit from the 3 bonuses of the game of items, circumstance, and status bonuses, so even if you have a wizard spell that gives you +2 to attack rolls, and a cleric spell that gives you +2 to attack rolls, you can't use both. You can only take the highest one. So what you end up with is not this amazing immortal powerhouse of a character, but rather a character who is far more versatile than a typical Pathfinder hero, with a lot more options for any given situation. Let's start by covering the steps of building a dual-class character. Overall, it's pretty much the same as making a normal character. You pick your ancestry, it gives you ability boosts, a heritage, and a feat. You pick a background, it gives you a skill feat and some boosts, and then instead of picking one class, for the dual-class variant, stay with me, this gets complicated, you pick 2 classes. You will be granted every single unique class feature right there at level 1, like a wizard spellcasting, a rogue sneak attack, a barbarian rage, or a fighter's BS accuracy. You're also going to get an ability boost from both classes. This is the only direct stat benefit a dual class character has over a single class character. A fighter wizard will get the bump to both strength and intelligence. But there's a bit of a catch to dual-class characters. You will not be adding your proficiencies together. If one class is trained in martial weapons and the other class is trained in martial weapons, you don't just become expert. Rather, you always take the highest proficiency for any given skill. Like for the fighter wizard. The wizard is trained in almost no weapons, and the fighter is expert in basically all the weapons that matter. So you are just expert in all the weapons that matter. This applies to saving throws, skill proficiencies, weapons, armor, and hit points. If you're a fighter wizard, you're not getting 16 hit points per level, you're still only getting 10 because the fighter's is higher. So let me walk you through what making a fighter sorcerer dual class might look like. Because we picked fighter and sorcerer, we get boosts to strength and charisma. You would have expert in perception from fighter. You would also have expert in fortitude and reflex saves from being a fighter. And you'd have expert in will saves from being a sorcerer. Taking the highest of all of them, you start expert in everything. You'd start with 10 hit points plus constitution modifier instead of 6 because the fighter's is higher. You would become trained in athletics or acrobatics from your fighter class and a specific skill from your sorcerer bloodline. And then you would get 3 plus intelligence modifier in additional skills. Since the sorcerer gets 2 plus intelligence and the fighter gets 3 plus intelligence, we take the 3 because it's higher. The fighter has better proficiency in all weapons and armor than the sorcerer, but we still do get trained in our sorcerer traditions, spell attack rolls, and DCs. After settling all of that, you get all of your level 1 specific features. From our fighter half, we get Attack of Opportunity, Shield Block, and our first level fighter feat. And from our sorcerer, we get to pick our Bloodline subclass, 5 cantrips, 3 first level spells. We'll add all of those to our spell repertoire, and since sorcerer is a spellcasting class, it does not get a feat until level 2. Speaking of level 2, leveling up and progressing your dual class character is also a little different than normal, following the same rules as character creation with some new exceptions. You'll still get all of your class's unique features, like the fighter's bravery and combat flexibility, but any benefit from a level up that would increase a proficiency to a level it's already at does nothing. So if a sorcerer bumps their fortitude up to expert, but it was already expert from being half fighter, that feature no longer has any benefit. But something like the fighter's bravery, which, sure, it doesn't bump your proficiency up since your will save is already expert, you still get the benefit bonus against fear effects. Just like character creation, you still only take the highest hit point value upon level up, which will be 10 per level from our fighter, and the following benefits are not gained twice. Skill feats, skill increases, General feats and ability boosts are not doubled. Yes, it is listed that each class gets them, but every class gets them at the exact same level because it applies to all characters. Dual class characters do not get 8 ability score increases at level 5. There is a slight exception to this, but that's only if you dual class Rogue or Investigator. Since they get more skill feats and skill increases than other classes, you use that progression instead of your other class. If you're playing a character who is 2 spellcasting classes, things can get a little complicated for you. You need to keep track of both spell lists and both sets of spell slots. If we're a level 1 wizard, dual class sorcerer, we have 6 level 1 spell slots, but 3 of them are for wizard, 3 of them are for sorcerer. Let's say we're a divine casting sorcerer. That means our 3 divine sorcerer spell slots can only be used to cast our divine sorcerer spells, and likewise our 3 arcane wizard spell slots can only be used to cast our arcane wizard spells. And this does go even more specific than that. Even if you are 2 arcane casting classes, like a dual class witch wizard at level 1, your 3 wizard spell slots can only be used to cast spells from your wizard spell list. Likewise, the witch can only cast from their witch spell list. If you have Burning Hands on your wizard spellbook, but not in your witch's spell list, then you cannot cast Burning Hands with your witch spell slots, even if they are the same tradition. Your spellcasting proficiencies will also be separate. This is a little more of a niche case, but if you're playing a wizard, war priest, cleric dual class, then just because your arcane spellcasting has reached master doesn't mean your divine spellcasting has. However, there's some clever ways around this. If you dual class a divine sorcerer with a war priest, then that divine sorcerer's divine spell attack roll and DC proficiency will count for your war priest spells because they're also divine. Like I said, this gets a little weird and complicated, but the TLDR is you can't share specific spells or spell slots, but you can share proficiency if they're the same tradition. The final thing I'll touch on here today is how to play with a group of dual-class PCs. You might be tempted to ramp up the difficulty, double the number of enemies, increase hit points and whatnot, but be careful, because a dual-class character is not that much purely stronger than a normal class character. Remember, they're going to have the same amount of hit points and actions per turn, they just have more options. Now, there are some exceptions to this. For example, any martial class that dual classes with fighter will be instantly more powerful than anything else a normal martial character could do. A barbarian's massive bonus damage is limited by their trained accuracy at level 1. If a barbarian is suddenly starting the game with expert proficiency with their maul, they win. This goes for anything, really. A flurry ranger, a precision ranger, a rogue, a swashbuckler. If any of them get that extra +2 to hit from the fighter, they will wipe the floor with a lot of enemies. This isn't quite as big of an issue with dual spellcaster dual classes like a wizard sorcerer, because they still have the same number of actions per turn to cast with. But do keep in mind that by level 3, that wizard sorcerer will get 14 spells a day. And that doesn't count cantrips. If you're worried about someone making a completely broken dual-class character, I do have a few simple fixes you can apply. The first one is just to ban the fighter as a dual-class option. It's not a fun idea because the fighter has some really cool feats in their kit, and a fighter spellcaster makes a really cool character. But if the sorcerer gets to go fighter, then you'll have to tell your barbarian they can't, and then it gets a little bit awkward. The other way to balance dual classing is to say there's no doubling down, or you need to pick exactly one martial class and one spellcasting class for your dual class. Again, this might not be fun for a lot of players because they might not want to deal with spells, but dual classing martials can still lead to some wild shenanigans, as even a barbarian Flurry Ranger will still break the game at its core mechanics. But also, if you're not afraid of ridiculously crazy broken characters and you want to see what your players can do, don't ban anything. Just have fun with it. Dual class characters are already sort of breaking the rules of the world anyway, so I say let your players have fun. If someone really wants to be that giant instinct barbarian fighter critically hitting for probably 40 damage at level 1, you know what, I say go wild. And there you go. Now you understand how the dual class variant rule works. I hope I was able to explain it a little better, and I hope you realize that it's not totally broken unless you go out of your way to make it totally broken. It's a great variant rule for groups that only have 1 or 2 players, and I think there's a lot of promise in a campaign that uses dual class. You could even get away with a 4-person game with dual class, and then make the fights just a little bit harder. Trust me, just a little bit harder. Don't double their hit points. Let me know in the comments if you've used the dual class variant or plan to sometime in the future. I'd love to hear how it went or how you think it's gonna go. Huge shout out to my patrons for making these videos possible. Thank you for supporting me. If you would like to also financially support the channel, there is a link in the description to my Patreon, as well as the big join button next to the subscribe button, which you should hit while you're down there. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, I like green screens.